Story 1. Being able to never consider working full-time again. Story 2. If my salary is a significant factor in my finances, I am not rich. Story 3. Having a comfortable life with loved ones, being debt-free, and fulfilling all my dreams. Story 4. Being rich to me means having slow mornings, a peaceful mind, a happy family, and the comfort of knowing I never had to step on anyone to succeed. Story 5. Retired and able to afford your lifestyle and pleasures, with work completely optional. Your money generates enough income to support you. Story 6. Being rich means I can buy what I need at the grocery store without checking the price tag, get the latest games as soon as they are released instead of waiting for Christmas, and live in my own nice, decent place where I am in control. Story 7. Not having to make decisions based on cost and only choosing what I think is best. If I want to eat, it does not matter how much it costs. I get what I want. If I want to live somewhere, cost is not a factor. If I want to send my children to a specific school, I do not hesitate. Story 8. Being able to fix something immediately after it breaks. Story 9. May you have everything you need for life and a family that loves one another. Story 10. Doing what you like, your dream job, going on a sabbatical, or traveling without having to think about how it is going to affect your finances. Story 11. Building savings has always felt like a foreign idea to me. Every dollar I earn goes to expenses. I cannot afford luxury items. I make just enough to pay the bills and nothing more. I have not bought a new pair of shoes or clothes in 3 years. If something bad happens and a major expense comes up, I will have to pull from my retirement to pay it. Everything is so expensive now. If you make enough money to both pay your bills and put money aside, you are rich to me. Story 12. Not having to worry about your spending or paying bills. Story 13. Not paying interest on anything and earning interest on the money I have. Story 14. When I am healthy and my mind is not clouded, I can think clearly. Story 15. My kids love me unconditionally. I am a fucking rich-ass mother. Story 16. Being able to pay your bills and live comfortably without stress. Anything more is extra. Story 17. I feel loved by those close to me. A roof over my head and food in my belly are nice, but that's just survival. Loving and being loved is the only thing I've found that turns survival into living. Story 18. I'm really sorry you're feeling so distressed. Are you safe right now? Do you have a plan, the means, or a timeline? If you are in immediate danger, call your local emergency number now. United States, 911, Europe, 112. If you are in the United States and need someone to talk to, call or text 988. In the United Kingdom, call 999 or Samaritans at 116 123. If you are elsewhere, contact your local emergency services or tell me your country and I can help find a crisis line. If you can, please reach out to someone you trust right now. If you want the corrected text, here it is. I am currently a millionaire and am planning to end my life due to severe mental health issues. From experience, a healthy mind is worth more than all the money in the world. Story 19. If you have food, water, and shelter, you are richer than 25% of the world's population. That makes all of us on Reddit rich. Story 20. Having a healthy family that loves each other. A few close friends who celebrate my birthday and support me in hard times. A place to sleep without worrying about losing it. Clean water. A comfortable temperature. Knowing I will have my next meal. A clean conscience, and a peace the world cannot give me. That is true wealth. Being able to be that friend to others adds to those riches. Story 21. Nothing phases you when you go to buy something and are told the price is in the millions or higher. Story 22. Being healthy and having my family with me, all in good health. Financial security means not having to worry about money. It means being able to pay basic bills, not worrying about income, and having the freedom to do what I want, change jobs, or handle hardships when they occur. Story 23. Living comfortably without worry. An annual salary of $780,000 was the minimum to do this a few years ago. With inflation, it is probably well above $800,000. I will never see this in my lifetime. Story 24. To have no financial restraints on your spending and a heart filled with love, good friendships, and perfect health. Story 25. You can buy whatever you want without thinking about how it will affect your future spending. Or you can simply do nothing all day without worrying. Story 26. Having people I love who love me back, good health, a job, a roof over my head and for my loved ones, hobbies, enough money to eat what I want and to handle the obstacles life throws at me, and the ability to resist the hedonic treadmill. Story 27. That I can sustain my wealth without having to work. Either I win the jackpot and start investing it, living off the profits, or I die within a couple of hours. Story 28. You do not have to work unless you choose to, worry about the date when your salary disappears from your account, or calculate your monthly expenses every day hoping that someday you will have sufficient savings at the end of the month. It also means not having to convert your expenses into equated monthly installments. Story 29. Having enough money to support yourself and to use your time as you want, rather than wasting it in a traditional job that fuels the life of someone else. Story 30. Financially, greater than $10 million. In general, I have a loving wife and an enjoyable job. Story 31. At any moment in my life, I can make a decision that will improve my current situation. Story 32. When you can take a day off without your bank account threatening you. Story 33. I am the world's richest man, and my sister is the world's richest woman. Unlike Elon Musk, I do not seek more wealth. I am happy with what I have. My sister retired 5 years early because she did not need to earn more. Story 34. Beef jerky money. If you want beef jerky, buy it. If you want 2 packs, buy 2. Story 35. Zero debt. No credit card, vehicle, or mortgage payments. Story 36. When you can go into a store and not worry about the price. Story 37. Spend the majority of your time doing the things you want to do. Story 38. He has the full name Richard and is a relaxed person rather than a rude one. Story 39. I work at Papa John's as a delivery driver while I'm in nursing school. I decided to go back to school later in life, so it really threw my finances into disarray. On top of that, I was recently married. We scrape by to pay rent and celebrate when we have $5 in our pockets to go to Wendy's. When I wake up and see her beside me or feel her embrace after a long day, I feel richer than any man in the history of the universe. Story 40. Not having to wonder whether I need to check my bank account before pumping gas. Story 41. I consider myself rich. I have far surpassed my young adult savings goals and can go anywhere and do whatever I want. I will not have to work past 50. My child, who is 15 now, will have a massive head start in life. My wife and I met at 18 and are still madly in love nearly 30 years later. I had several health scares this year that prompted reflection, and I am not disappointed. I want to live forever, but in my mid-40s I feel fulfilled and satisfied. I recently changed careers and have not yet found my place in the new industry, but the journey is as enjoyable as the destination. Perspective is the limiting factor. I used to measure richness by cash when comparing myself to people with more money, but I now see that happiness outweighs money. You need enough money to maintain happiness, so I am not saying I could be working at McDonald's and feel the same, but I have enough to live a great, fulfilling life and do the things I want. Story 42. You work because you want to, but not because you have to. Story 43. Not having to scrutinize every purchase and being able to spend without checking my bank account first. Story 44. I don't worry about money when making any decision. For example, if my mom has a stroke, I don't want my mind to go straight to, how much? Story 45. Not looking at menu prices. My wife and I were on the last day of our honeymoon in Hawaii. We had to get our money back from our original wedding venue, which was a restaurant and event space, but we received only half the refund in cash. The other half was a credit for $1,600 toward the restaurant. We spent that credit in January, so by November it did not feel like we were spending our own money. For the last 10 days we ordered the most expensive dishes, including filet mignon, lobster, and locally caught fish, without asking about market prices. We ordered fancy cocktails and took desserts to go. It was great fun, and we felt very indulgent. Not having to worry about menu prices made the trip for me. Story 46. If you have so much net worth that you can go to sleep at night without worrying about your economic security the next day, that's rich. Story 47. I own 2 houses and 1 apartment. I can travel 8 times a year and dine at Michelin-starred restaurants. Story 48. Being rich is about the freedom of choice. The choices you make are up to you. Story 49. I am happy. To be more precise, if I have God's Spirit in me, I share its qualities: love, joy, peace, and goodness. Story 50. Enough money that you can retire well before 65 if you want. Most Reddit users are bitter losers. This is true of anyone who has more than they do. Story 51. 50% more than I have now, laughing out loud. More seriously, passive income to cover my lifestyle. Story 52. Being able to buy a beer, a burrito, or a book today and still have money tomorrow for more purchases. Story 53. Freedom. To do anything, buy anything, and have the time to pursue what you desire. Vacation at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday. Spend weeks with family. Story 54. I use Claire Huxtable's definition of being rich. 1. Does your money work for you? 2. Do you work hard for your money? If you answered 2, the answer is no. If you answered 1, the answer is yes. Story 55. After all bills are paid, if you are left with a significant amount of money, you can splurge or invest it. Story 56. I live in a paid-for house that I love. My 10-year-old car runs great. I have food, shelter, and enough monthly income plus a little extra. I can afford to be retired and pursue my hobbies daily. I can afford 1 large trip each year to anywhere I want. My health is good and I am mobile. I do not need any more than this, and I am completely happy and content. Story 57. Being rich, to me, means I can buy what I want without concern for the price or feeling guilty. Story 58. Never having to worry about money except when everyone you meet wants some. Story 59. In the United States, the country club personifies a wealthy lifestyle because it is exclusive and curates the people you associate with. I see them striving to separate themselves from the middle and lower economic classes to avoid the banality of ordinary life. Story 60. Thinking about and doing what I want instead of what I must do. Story 61. Living in a home worth $1 million or more in the Midwest and still having money left over for frequent family vacations, a nanny or daycare, and summer day camps costing $4,000 or more for school-age children. Story 62. Being rich means you can work without ever thinking about salary or expenses. If at the end of the month you must subtract expenses from salary to get by, you are not rich. If your expenses are well below your income, you are okay. Being rich is defined by wants. Being poor is defined by needs. Story 63. Someone who does not know how much they earn or when they get paid. Story 64. Not a definition, but a good sign that you are rich is that you would not notice a late paycheck. Story 65. Wanting for nothing is an extremely rare condition, especially among the wealthy. Story 66. Do what you want while still being able to pay your bills. Story 67. Own a house that is less than 25 years old, and a garage large enough to park 1 or 2 cars, while still leaving plenty of room for tools and other items. Also, avoid living paycheck to paycheck without needing to be extremely wealthy. Story 68. From John Goodman's speech in The Gambler. Have a paid-off house, a nearly new paid-off car, and a few million in the bank or invested so you can live off it forever. Story 69. For some reason, in the last few years I have considered someone rich if they have a maid. I hate cleaning. Story 70. Be happy with your job enough to turn it into a career. Story 71. In a Chinese saying, half an acre of land, an ox, a wife and children, and a warm bed. Story 72. I want to own a farmstead or spend my life traveling in a camper without ever worrying about finances. Story 73. For me, being rich means that having more money will not change my life. Story 74. Financially, I have the freedom to do anything I want without concern about money or how to obtain it, because there will never be a shortage for me and my family. In the truest sense, I am happy, healthy, and at peace with the highs and lows of life. Story 75. Having a large family and being able to live at or slightly above our means. Story 76. Kids who are not alienated by your crappiness as a person are making Elon Musk the world's poorest person. Story 77. Being able to go to the hospital for whatever you need, including checkups, emergencies, preventive care, or immediate care without worrying about it, means you are rich. Story 78. If I could spend about $200,000 per year, have my net worth grow, and not need to earn any money aside from investment gains, I would place that somewhere near $10 million. When I reach that level, I will have a new, higher standard that others have, but I do not. Story 79. I have a job that allows me to spend time with my kids, pick them up from doctor's appointments, and take them to after-school events. I have healthy children and a husband who loves me dearly, and I am allowed to put God first in our lives without fear of repercussions. The connection I have with my family is more valuable than any amount of money. I don't make more than $100,000 a year, but I am the richest person I know. Story 80. Not having to worry anymore about anything related to money. Story 81. Stable. It does not require billionaire-level wealth. It means having security measures in place that give you a stress-free environment so your choices do not affect your overall standard of living. This depends on each person's lifestyle, but you get the idea. That includes multiple sources of income, a retirement and healthcare plan, no fear of losing your job, emergency funds, and manageable expenses or debt. You can wake up without meeting anyone's expectations and be completely fine. Very wealthy people may have this, but you do not have to earn 6 figures a month to achieve it. It is about being smart with your money. Story 82. Not having to worry about the price of anything except private jets, yachts, mansions, islands, and businesses. Story 83. Cool car, nice house. You are envied by the people around you, also known as success. Literally the point or goal of life. Story 84. Have you ever seen the woman who makes extravagant meals with lobster tails and tomahawk steaks, and then arranges the flowers for her table on TikTok? I want to be that fucking rich so I do not have to worry about cooking a $3,000 meal. Story 85. 10 million Swiss francs, not including your owner-occupied home. Story 86. Being able to live at the level you desire without needing to work. Story 87. For example, I would rather spend my free time with my child, my husband, or friends than clean my apartment, so I pay a cleaner. I would rather take a nap than cook lunch and do the grocery shopping, so I order food delivery or eat at a restaurant. I would rather go on a family picnic than paint my walls myself, which I am perfectly capable of because I have done it many times before, so I hire a carpenter. I used to live in poverty, so I have experienced both. I would say that is the main difference. I still stress about money, but in a different way. Instead of worrying how I will afford to eat and fix my washer, I worry about whether I am making the right investment decisions and similar concerns. Story 88. Being rich means I could stop working tomorrow and it would have zero impact on my day-to-day living expenses. I would not have to work again unless I wanted to. Story 89. Usually, at approximately 40 million in net worth, you are considered an ultra-high net worth individual. And in my opinion, that is when someone becomes rich. Of course, you can stop working with 10 million in net worth, but it is not the same lifestyle. Over 100 million in net worth is another level. Story 90. Having enough money and time to do most of the reasonable things you want. Story 91. I don't pay attention to price tags, and I act on whims and hobbies first. Story 92. I understand the idea of being rich in love, family, and other things, but when I hear the word rich, I think of money above all else. Growing up, rich meant having a mansion with a pool and a Porsche in the driveway. Celebrities seemed rich to me, and that image has stuck. If you can stop working today and still live in relative luxury, you are rich. Story 93. Not having to rely solely on a work salary to cover living expenses and savings, and being able to take a break from work for a reasonable period of time, such as 6 to 12 months, without financial impact. Story 94. Being able to buy what I want in daily life without having to think twice. Not luxury items, but everyday things like paying for gas and groceries, and occasionally buying a nice sweater I like without hunting for a discount. Story 95. I can't stand when people say, money is not important. It's usually only rich people who say that or who say, my life is so hard. If they spent one day in my shoes, I promise they would never say that again. Story 96. A fully paid off house and enough passive income to cover your monthly expenses mark the moment when you realize your job is no longer essential for survival. Story 97. Being able to buy what you love for your friends and family without having to choose who receives it. Story 98. You can retire and have your future finances secured for a generation or two. Story 99. I looked at my bank account and saw that I could cover rent, utilities, and other expenses for a decade without lifting a finger. I was rich once. These days, not so much. Story 100. Simply being free to do what I want and to avoid what I do not want. Story 101. I cannot seem to make more than $70,000 per year without failing. Fuck post-traumatic stress disorder. Story 102. My definition of being rich is not needing to constantly worry about money and having the freedom to choose whether to work full-time. It means a household that can thrive on one income, a very comfortable life with loved ones, no debt, and the ability to fulfill your dreams. It also means enjoying fun, fabulous parties, beautiful homes, glamorous fashion, and the luxurious, envy-inducing lifestyles of wealthy people. Story 103. No debt and enough savings to never have to work again with no financial worries. Story 104. Whatever the opposite of reporting to a job to make someone else rich is. Story 105. What matters to me is the love of family and friends, good mental and physical health, low stress, and time to do things I enjoy. Work has nothing to do with it for me. Story 106. I am quite wealthy with tens of millions. I grew up in poverty. I feel richest on the one day each summer when I go to the farmer's market and have an absolute shopping spree on berries and other fresh fruit. I always wanted to do that as a child, but we could only afford apples and bananas. My husband and I are thrifty and responsible with our money. Those fruits are not a budget killer. I spend under $100, and we spend more on other luxuries. That day is when I really reflect on how lucky I am to be able to buy and do what I want. The other thing is the ability to help family without a second thought. We are secret millionaires, so it has not come up often since our families do not know. The few times it has, I cannot explain how good it felt. Story 107. Can shop during the week for necessities without checking the price. Can travel multiple times a year but does not have to. Owns one or more properties. Has high-quality, non-essential items in their home rather than low-cost or used furniture from Craigslist or a low-cost furniture store. Story 108. To me, it means being happy with what you have. I saw a post using the word wealthy. If we mean rich as a measure of financial stability, I would call that wealth. I make good money, and for the first time in my life, I will earn over $100,000 this year. I do not own a house or a vehicle. I rent and lease a 2025 Ram truck, and I feel rich. I am content with how things are, although I still want to improve. Story 109. Waking up and deciding what I want to do each day. No obligations, no dependence on paychecks, and spending time with my future wife and children whenever I choose. Story 110. When you do not have to worry about bills or going to work. Story 111. I worked for the extremely wealthy, and compared to them I was dirt poor. Everyone has their own definition of what that means. For me, wealthy meant having your own Learjet to take you anywhere. You were residing in one of 4 properties you owned, each worth hundreds of millions of dollars. You had paintings on the walls worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I worked in one of those apartments. He was paying $35,000 a month in rent. Other tenants owned yachts. One billionaire owned 4. The billionaires hardly communicated with the millionaires. It was funny that way. There were definitely cliches. I often went down to the garage levels where there were many Bentleys. The less rich drove Teslas. I became friends with one resident there. He was a mid-level millionaire, worth roughly $65 million at 34 years old. I worked the graveyard shift, and he would come to my desk and talk. He did 88% of the talking, and I mostly listened. He had relationship problems. We became somewhat friendly over the year. He broke up with his girlfriend. When he did, he often bought her a new car as a parting gift. It was usually a Mercedes-Benz sedan. He found out it was my birthday and took my wife and me to a local National Football League game. We were on the field and met some players. Afterwards, we went to dinner at one of the most expensive steakhouses in the city. He gave me a birthday card, and it was one of the most meaningful gifts I have ever received. Being on the football field was awesome. He owned a business with many stores and met with his managers several times a week. He said that once he was established, he worked a 15-hour work week. Story 112. I don't have to think. Can I buy that? When I'm in shops or online, cars and a house are no problem. For most other purchases, I either buy them or not. Money is not an issue. Story 113. Stability means I can go shopping and buy whatever I want while my bills are paid. My savings are stocked, and my investments are growing. Story 114. World's top 0.01% or a developed country's 0.1%. Then maybe down to the top 10% is well off, or, in my language, velhavenda. Story 115. Slow morning and removing cost as a major factor in making life decisions. Story 116. I once saw something about levels of wealth that I liked. 1. Comfortable. You do not think about adding guacamole or queso to your Chipotle order. 2. Doing well. You do not think about the price of what you order at a nice restaurant or gifts for holidays. 3. Wealthy. You do not think about the price of vacations. Story 117. Being rich means having a lot of money for a limited time. If I win the lottery, I'm rich until I spend it all. Then I'm poor again. To me, that is different from being wealthy. Wealthy means the money keeps coming in and I do not fall low. If we are specifically talking about finances, people can be rich in other areas that do not involve money at all. Story 118. You no longer worry about whether you can afford most things. You have an accountant who handles your finances, so you do not need to sit down and create a monthly budget. Vacations focus on experiences rather than cost. Story 119. Being able to afford impulse purchases at the grocery store and bookstore. Story 120. Not having to look at price tags because the price makes no difference to you. Story 121. Right now, I would say being able to pay all my bills and do whatever I want without worrying about money or having to make sacrifices. Story 122. When the money you accumulate from owning assets is so large that you no longer need to work and you do not need to check the prices of the things you buy. Story 123. To me, being rich means having enough money so you do not have to work and can schedule your time as you wish. For example, if you had $5 to $10 million, you could put it to work and receive a monthly income that far exceeds your expenses. You could go to the movies every day for the rest of your life and not have to worry about working or other large expenses. Story 124. Have you seen that episode of The Simpsons where they talk about getting 3 secret murders? Story 125. Being able to quit your job with minimal changes to your current lifestyle, or already living comfortably without a salary. Story 126. Having 4 children who are now good people and watching them raise 7 grandchildren who are growing into kind, responsible adults. Story 127. The real definition of rich. Happiness is not material. It is what you have inside, not what you own. Live to be happy with the people around you. Do not waste time chasing things you assume will make you happy. Do you remember the birthday trip we planned? You did not go because you chose to work so you could afford a new pair of shoes. We are trained to work endless hours instead of living. You may chase money and success, but if you miss your real life, will you feel successful? Share your happiness with others. Give your time and kindness, not material things. Be polite. Smile at strangers. Say hello. Hug friends. And show your emotions to those who matter. They may not know how you feel until you say it. You will not see a hearse towing a moving truck. Make people remember you for your kindness, joy, and love. Story 128. I will never have to worry about whether I can afford anything again. Story 129. Being able to pretty much buy what you want without having to check your bank account. Story 130. Values and ethics do not feed a family. Money does. Even the unscrupulous people with money are revered and loved over honest, good people. Give me money any day over any other nonsense. Story 131. If you never have to wash, dry, and fold laundry, prepare meals, or wash the dishes, and not because someone else in your house is doing it for you, you are rich, though not necessarily wealthy. Story 132. Being rich is a wide spectrum, so people are likely to give different definitions of rich. For me, it was when I stopped having to count every penny and watch the cash register tally at the supermarket. That felt like a major milestone, going food shopping and not caring what the bill came to. Once I stopped having to strategize my daily needs, I thought I was rich. However, if you asked me who the rich are, I would not say people like me or people who live near me. Most people think of the rich as someone who lives 2 towns over with a better car and a slightly nicer house. I would not even say people who can maintain their lifestyle without working, because you can do that with single-digit millions in assets under management depending on the cost of living where you live. Being rich, in the sense of the rich, is when your personal wealth transcends personal comfort and is used to directly influence the world. Story 133. You have assets that generate passive income that exceeds your spending. In other words, you do not need to have a job. Story 134. It is completely relative. Most people compare their current situation with others, and studies show they continue to do so as they move up the ladder. For the first half of my life, I paid $100 in rent and donated plasma for $225 per month. At that time, anyone who had a job seemed rich to me. Story 135. People are confusing rich and wealthy. God help us. The level of financial literacy in this country is abysmal. Story 136. Not worrying about money means being in a position where you can pay an accountant to worry about it for you. Story 137. Rich. Metaphorical. Having peace of mind, usually accompanied by the love and support of family and friends. You mentally and socially have backing and are able to sustain yourself and those you care about. Material, having enough funds so you do not worry about getting by day to day or month to month. The earnings from your time in exchange for money remain meaningful but are not defining or a short-term limitation on your financial health. Wealthy. You have enough funds to ensure you will thrive for your lifetime. Earnings from your time in exchange for money are not substantial. Please tax wealth, not work, before the wealthy finish crushing us into oblivion by obfuscating and by pitting us against the rich and the aspirational who are dumb enough to think they are wealthy. Story 138. I am in the top 3% of earners in my state, yet I still work for an income. If I stopped working, I would eventually go broke. Those top percent claims can be misleading. I do not have fuck it money yet. Story 139. My definition of rich has changed through the years. Rich to me now is good health, physically and mentally. I have seen wealthy people and observed how they suffer or how lonely they are. But aren't we all? I'd rather be lonely with money, crying in a villa off the coast of Santorini than freezing by the Great Lakes. I choose good health and growing mental stability. Story 140. I was hoping that something about love and health would be the first comment. Story 141. Being able to spend without thinking about what is in your accounts, or having money withdrawn from your accounts automatically without noticing or worrying about where the money is going. I work in auto insurance, and once in a while I have a customer call saying they meant to cancel their insurance 5 years ago and forgot. They have been with company X ever since and say they totally forgot they had you all. They are so laissez-faire about it, laughing as if it is something normal and silly. Then I look at how much we have been withdrawing from their account for 5 years, and it is in the thousands. It never ceases to blow my mind. Story 142. When I forget which house's garage I parked my Aston Martin in. Story 143. To me, it is simply being able to give myself a gift of 400 euros. It will not put me in a difficult position. Story 144. You do not need to think about the amount of money you are about to spend. Story 145. Being able to get everything you need without making any compromises or experiencing financial stress depends on the person. Story 146. For me, it means you can have all the commodities you want without looking at the price tag. Story 147. I can have all my bills on autopay, put anything in my cart at the grocery store, and not have to watch the pump when filling up. That's the dream. Story 148. It depends on the frame of reference. Compared to the average person, I am relatively well off. I have a nice house, a good job that I enjoy, and I can afford the holidays I want. However, I do not own expensive sports cars, a yacht, or a private jet, and I do not have enough passive income to stop working. Compared to many wealthy people, I am not rich. Story 149. If an alarm clock is required for me to get up so I can keep a home and a car, I am not rich. Story 150. Wealth should be measured by a person's standard of living. It is the ability to maintain that standard with minimal effort for any length of time. Story 151. To me, being truly rich means not having to deal with my difficult boss at the hospital and being able to go to work in absolute peace. It does not involve money. Story 152. When I have a yacht, multiple homes, and can afford to drink 24-year-old whiskey daily. Story 153. You can spend freely on anything from homes to groceries. Story 154. One long staircase that goes up. One even longer that comes down. One more that leads nowhere, just for show. Story 155. Enough money for me and my next 2 generations to own homes and vacation homes, to attend college if they want, to get by while working, and to be happy regardless of salary. Story 156. Being able to go to dinner without worrying about what others order. Buying organic berries. Story 157. Rich is relative and depends on your social circle and location. To me, being rich means having enough discretionary income and liquidity that owning a private jet is not a big deal. To the people I grew up with, being rich means being able to buy a new car. Story 158. You are rich when you live your best life and unintentionally live below your means. Story 159. I called my husband during dinner after returning from a town meeting. What I heard on the other end made me feel rich. The baby cooing, the dogs barking, and my neighbor popping in with her niece and nephew to play with my children. To others it may sound like chaos, but to me, who grew up poor and was an only child of divorced parents, it is richness beyond measure. In the literal sense, I suppose it means having a 4-bedroom or larger house, doing grocery shopping without needing sales or coupons, buying clothes off the rack without checking price tags, having household staff, owning 3 or more cars, taking vacations anywhere at any time, and being cool when it is hot and warm when it is cold. Story 160. Being able to lose my job, have no income, and survive for 6 months is the bare minimum to avoid struggling. Losing my job with no income and surviving for the rest of my life would mean being rich. Story 161. Being able to buy the things I need and want without hesitation or worry, and not having to spend significant time on tasks I would rather avoid. Story 162. Financial independence means not having to work if you do not want to, and being able to live the lifestyle you choose. Story 163. Being rich is having an awesome family to share the fruits of my hard work. My real name is Rich. Story 164. My happiness is measured in outdoor memories and smelly socks. Story 165. Wealth is relative. We have luxuries that our ancestors could not even dream of. In medieval times, being rich meant that when you defecated in a bucket, someone else emptied it through a window. In 1985 in California, it took 150 hours of work at the minimum wage to buy a 20-inch color television. But nowadays it takes 14 hours to get a 55-inch smart television at Walmart. I would say that being rich means being significantly better off than others in your environment. Story 166. You do not have to check prices and can buy anything you want or request any service you need. Money is not an issue because there will always be more of it. Story 167. No debt, complete control of your urges, and clear boundaries between needs and wants. At that point, you truly master your money and yourself. Story 168. Never worrying about finances. Obviously, no matter how much you have, you will never stop worrying completely, but having day-to-day expenses and extras not be a stress is what being rich means to me. Story 169. Economically independent, that is, not forced to work for someone else for scraps just to survive. Story 170. I had to work this out recently. To me, being rich means having enough money to live to the age of 110 without needing employment. All your needs will be met, including healthcare. You will be able to enjoy your time, travel, and pursue hobbies. Unexpected expenses will not be overwhelming. You can eat well and afford any level of education you desire. If you have 2.8 children, their needs will also be met at least until they turn 25. Story 171. Having more money than you need and not having to worry about paying for bills, food, medical care, and other expenses. Story 172. My definition of rich is specific. A paid-off home, the ability to eat out whenever I want at reasonably priced, quality mom and pop restaurants costing $10 to $20. Children's college funds fully funded. An emergency fund sufficient to last 5 years, and a retirement account of approximately $1.5 million or more. Story 173. Not on medication or hospitalized due to illness. Story 174. Not having to worry about having enough to eat, a roof over my head, or my children living on the streets. Story 175. My husband totaled our car. We got a new one the next week. It was not brand new, just another old beater, but I know many people who could not have done that. Story 176. A full stomach, an empty scrotum, the laughter of my children and the love of my wife. And last but not least, self-sufficiency. No reliance on anyone to make a living, essentially freedom from wage slavery. Story 177. Having enough money to pay others to do things for you so you can do whatever you want. Story 178. My favorite one was when your living room couch is not up against a wall. Story 179. Having enough money in the bank to live solely off interest, probably around $4 to $5 million in a high-yield savings account. Story 180. Not worrying about money and being surrounded by loved ones. Story 181. Not flinching at the price of a bag of gas station beef jerky. Story 182. It is not $1 million. I have more than that, yet I feel almost broke. Story 183. Not feeling anxious when the packages my wife bought arrive in the mail. Story 184. A paid-off house, a paid-off car, and sufficient investment funds to provide a comfortable life and a secure retirement. Story 185. Having a child who calls just to say, "I love you," and having more money than I need. Story 186. Being at peace and having your table filled with family members. Story 187. You can retire without worrying about how to invest your money and still live a more than comfortable life. Story 188. Not being embarrassed about everything. All the rich people I know are really open and not ashamed of their beliefs. They live very freely, unlike us. Story 189. Getting up in the morning, doing whatever you want, and not having to worry about how to pay for it. Story 190. The ability to live without a care in the world and not have to work. Story 191. Make enough money to be comfortable at a job that does not take up the majority of my life. After having children, I want to spend time with them and eventually grow our own home-based business. Story 192. Start at the moment you need something unexpectedly and are able to simply get it or have it fixed, without waiting for payday or rearranging your budget. Story 193. My wife and daughter have what they need, and we get to spend quality time together. Story 194. A warm home, bills paid, groceries in the refrigerator, medications picked up, and gas in the tank. Story 195. I remember as a kid asking my father if we were poor. His answer came swiftly. We have a roof over our heads and we never go to bed hungry, so we are not poor. Story 196. Financial freedom is borrowing money from company assets you own to pay for your cost of living. Story 197. Being able to quit your job and sleep in every day without any problems. Story 198. To me, it is being a high earner or being able to withdraw from one's investments without diminishing their value. For example, doctors, lawyers, and finance professionals who have decades of investing experience and can now retire if they want to. Story 199. Financial freedom and freedom of time. Nannies, dry cleaning and laundry, housekeeping, a chauffeur, a personal assistant, a private personal trainer at home, and spa treatments in your home. Story 200. Not living paycheck to paycheck and not worrying about your bills or spending. Story 201. Having 24 hours to do whatever I wanted. I could either waste it or do whatever came to mind. Story 202. Being able to buy things without looking at the price tag, whether groceries or a new graphics card, within reason, no private plane. Story 203. To me, being rich is when money never crosses your mind. You go to a nice restaurant and do not check the prices or the final bill. You want a new car, you just buy it. You take a 3-week trip to Japan and pay someone to arrange flights and hotels. When someone asks how much something cost, you answer, I have no idea. Story 204. I have the time, money, and energy to do things I enjoy with the people I love without overexerting myself, overthinking, or having to budget excessively to make them happen. Story 205. When your investments make enough to cover your lifestyle. Story 206. 1. You can comfortably afford the price of a German car. You do not need to own the car, but you must be able to purchase or finance a Bavarian Motor Works 3 Series any day without causing financial distress. 2. You can choose where to live within your city, except ultra-high net worth neighborhoods that are clearly worth $30 million or more. We are talking entry-level wealthy. If you choose a smaller apartment because it fits your lifestyle, that is fine. However, you should have the ability to qualify for a mortgage in any other area of the city if you wanted to. 3. You do not worry about grocery prices. You are aware of them, but you do not focus on brands or cost. You buy ingredients, and if you try something and like it, you may continue to use it. You may also explore lesser-known or foreign brands. 4. You can go on vacation once a year and stay at any 5-star hotel without too much trouble. About $400 to $500 per night for a Hilton or equivalent. 5. You have wealthy person financial issues, such as needing to fire your accountant or speaking with wealth managers about your investment strategy. You also understand the phrase, it is so hard to find good help these days. I am not rich, but it is actually hard to find good workers whether you pay industry standard or above and beyond. Story 207. I'm rich if I can do what I need and a lot of what I want without having to make sacrifices. Story 208. Having a family who loves you and being able to provide for them is what being rich means to me. Story 209. My definition is this: when income exceeds spending and the surplus generates even more. Story 210. I live in Marin County, just north of San Francisco on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. You need at least $10 million here to be considered wealthy. Luckily, in my early 20s, I started buying real estate in the mid-1990s, and it has more than paid off for me. Although I now own my properties outright, I do not consider myself rich at all. Story 211. Receiving a paycheck and still having money left from your previous paycheck. Story 212. Being comfortable means knowing that you can pay all your bills at the end of the month, eat decent, healthy food, and that if your car breaks down, it does not ruin you financially for years to come. Not rich in a monetary sense, but rich in peace of mind. Story 213. Saving enough for retirement so that when you reach it, you will be able to do anything you want, not just scrimp to survive. Also being able to pay off your house by then. Story 214. Being rich means not having to work for a salary. If you have to work, even if you are earning a lot, you are not rich. Story 215. A lot of wealthy people take stock instead of a salary. Then they borrow money against that value to live off. That's rich. Story 216. If my salary covers all my expenses, I still have ample money for leisure, and my job does not occupy much of my day, then I am rich. Story 217. I had a friend who used to say, I know I've made it when I can go to a restaurant and order without looking at the prices. I personally like John Goodman's rant about being in a position where you can say no to others. If you own your house outright, have enough money in the bank and in Roth IRA and 401k accounts and other retirement accounts to live off indefinitely, even modestly, and you can work any job you want because you choose to, then you are rich. This can be true even if you drive a 20-year-old car or brew your own coffee. The point of wealth is to enable freedom, not to accrue things. Story 218. Bills are paid on time, I have a roof over my head, food in the refrigerator, a car to drive, and I do not have to stress about those things. Story 219. I have a warm, safe home, access to what I need to live, such as a reliable car, food, and electricity, and I feel happy and that life has meaning. For me, that means my children and my husband. Story 220. Being fully myself and loved for it. I have an awesome family, friends, and a girlfriend. Story 221. It's not about money, it's about happiness. If you are surrounded by love and joy, you are extremely rich. Story 222. I am content with where I am. I have family and friends to share my time with and a life rich in meaning. I will never be rolling in money, so I have given up stressing about it. I can manage the bills if I am careful. Story 223. For me, it would be being content with what I have and being able to help as many animals as possible. Story 224. A relationship to economic production that is primarily or exclusively one of ownership, where you derive profit from other people's labor rather than your own. Story 225. Being rich financially is when the only worry you ever have is where you should spend your money. Being rich in other ways is being loved and surrounded by a community of people who genuinely care about you. I long for both. Story 226. You do not need to check your bank balance every time before buying something or to spend months or years saving up for it. Story 227. Freedom to do what I want when I want and not worry about it. Helping my loved ones whenever they need it. Having seen the world. Being a good, knowledgeable person. Staying humble while having money. That is extremely meaningful to me. Story 228. When I am no longer stressed about having to work and I reach my target number, I will mentally retire. Story 229. My honest opinion. If you have a roof over your head and your basic needs are met, the people you love are healthy, and you can order food at a restaurant without worrying about the cost, you are a rich person. Story 230. Within reason, I can do almost anything I want. I can splurge on a private jet to Italy, eat at a Michelin-starred restaurant in New York, blow a few stacks at a strip club, buy every item in the marketplace for whatever game I'm playing, or pay off my family's debt. It is financial freedom and beyond. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.